From this day forward, a new vision will govern our land. From this day forward, it's going to be only America first. America first.
Standing in front of the U.S. Capitol on January 20th, 2017, Donald Trump said two words that would change American politics forever: America first. The message may have seemed simple, but it signaled the dawn of a new era in American history. America First was not just a slogan, it was a philosophy with profound implications for American statecraft. Nowhere was this more true than on the issue of foreign policy. Trump's message in 2016 was a seismic break with the foreign policy that had dominated both parties since the end of the Cold War. But at the same time, it was deeply rooted in American history. To understand that history, we have to go back to the beginning. The historian Walter Russell Mead outlined four schools of thought in American foreign policy, centered around the philosophy of four American statesmen. The first are the Wilsonians, named for Woodrow Wilson. Wilsonians dream of a world based on international law and human rights, enforced by global institutions, with America at the helm. In 1917, Wilson famously declared that the world must be made safe for democracy. In the view of his intellectual progeny, that is the highest calling of American foreign policy. The second are the Hamiltonians, named for Alexander Hamilton. Like the Wilsonians, this school is also internationalist, but unlike the Wilsonians, Hamiltonians view the world as an economic marketplace and believe American foreign policy should be focused on defending and expanding the international financial system by supporting free trade and global commerce, rather than liberal democratic values. The third are the Jeffersonians, named for Thomas Jefferson. The Jeffersonians represent a libertarian, inward-looking foreign policy, the closest of the four to true isolationism. They prioritize the preservation of American liberty and democracy at home, and are skeptical of global institutions and of internationalism writ large. The fourth and final group are the Jacksonians, named for Andrew Jackson. The Jacksonians are neither isolationist nor internationalist. They view the world in terms of competing interests rather than ideologies or values. Jacksonianism is an old-school, honor-bound view of foreign policy. We won't mess with you if you don't mess with us, but if you do try to hurt us, we punch back twice as hard. Since World War II, U.S. foreign policy has been shaped primarily by Hamiltonians and Wilsonians. Both were internationalists. Both believed in an activist American role in the world. The Hamiltonians saw American foreign policy as a means of opening and accessing global markets and lucrative trade networks, what would later come to be known as neoliberalism. The Wilsonians saw the liberal world order in terms of values. This camp included both neoconservatives and liberal internationalists alike, who argued for an active U.S. military role in promoting democracy, human rights, and the rule of law, as well as ever closer global integration. But the failures of globalism and foreign adventurism undermined the legitimacy of both these schools of thought in the minds of many Americans. And for the first time in decades, Donald Trump offered something different. It wasn't globalism, but it wasn't isolationism either. It was Jacksonian nationalism.
You seem to have everything to think of except your country.
We're going to have strong, incredible borders.
Texas today commemorates 400 miles of new border wall constructed under President Trump.
Abu Bakr al-Baghdadi is dead.
We're taking in right now hundreds of billions of dollars. We're taking in billions of dollars of tariffs.
The United States military successfully killed the #1 terrorist anywhere in the world, Qasem Soleimani.
The president heralding the first Arab nations to recognize Israel since 1994.
Jacksonians don't believe America is an idea or an abstract set of principles. They believe, as Walter Russell Mead wrote, that it is the nation-state of the American people, and its chief business lies at home. The purpose of American government, in this view, is not to make the world safe for democracy, or to serve the interests of a liberal international order, but to maintain a singular and exclusive commitment to defending the well-being of American citizens. In other words, America first. Jacksonians are not shrinking violets in the realm of foreign policy. They want America to be muscular in defense of its interests, and they hate when our leaders are weak, either because they're too isolationist and are therefore unwilling to defend the country, or because they are too internationalist and are therefore concerned with human rights or democracy rather than the safety and prosperity of the American people. But Jacksonian foreign policy also emphasizes being fair and non-ideological in international relations.
We went from mistakes in Iraq to Egypt to Libya to President Obama's line in the sand in Syria. Each of these actions have helped to throw the region into chaos and gave ISIS the space it needs to grow and prosper. It all began with the dangerous idea that we could make Western democracies out of countries that had no experience or interest in becoming a Western democracy.
In the words of President Jackson himself, America should seek to preserve peace and cultivate friendship on fair and honorable terms. The Trump presidency was a great time to be a friend of America. We strengthened ties with allies in Asia, like Australia, Japan, and India, negotiated the historic Abraham Accords, and forged stronger relationships than we've had in decades with allies in our own backyard. At the same time, our enemies were put on notice. In a blink of an eye, Trump reversed years of American weakness and defeated ISIS, killing its leader, al-Baghdadi. He took out Qasem Soleimani, a senior Iranian general who had the blood of Americans on his hands. And he had no time for silly international agreements that served no purpose other than tying America's hands and weakening our nation. Unlike the Wilsonians, the Jacksonians don't see international conflict in moral terms. It's not good versus evil or democracy versus tyranny. It's simply different nations pursuing their respective interests. The purpose of American government is to pursue our interests, even as every other country's government pursues theirs.
I do not blame China or any other country, of which there are many, for taking advantage of the United States on trade. If their representatives are able to get away with it, they are just doing their jobs. From this day forward, we will compete on a fair and equal basis. We are not going to let the United States be taken advantage of anymore. I am always going to put America first, the same way that I expect all of you in this room to put your countries first.
Trump's message resonated with millions of Americans, and for good reason. In the world today, isolationism is simply not an option. Even if we wanted to, it would be impossible and dangerous for America to completely retreat from the world stage altogether. But in our engagements abroad, whether they're economic, diplomatic, or militaristic, we must remember what American foreign policy is for. America first.